Hello everyone, I am Sammy, your devoted manga otaku, and welcome to my manga space. Today I'm going to be talking about all the manga I read in September, and full disclosure, I did not read The Girl from the Other Side, which was the series that won my poll in September. With school starting up, both my kids got sick because children are germ buckets, and my husband went on a week-long business trip, and the time just sort of slipped away. But it's the first thing that I'm going to be reading in October, so you can expect to see my review in my next wrap-up. Also, I'm contemplating taking part in the Manga Freak-a-thon, which is being hosted by Bizarre Individual and Marguerite's Manga. I've been hesitant to formally plan anything because October is usually very busy for me. Also, it's my birthday month, so I'll be posting some content around that. Regardless, I highly recommend you check out the Manga Freak-a-thon. There's this really cool bingo board, and essentially as you read your TBR, you check off items or themes you find in your books off the board. That's a super basic explanation, and from my understanding, some of the Manga Freak-a-thon takes place over on Instagram, so I'll make sure to leave some links in the description below so that you can check it out. But yeah, it looks like a ton of fun. And with that, I invite you to grab a coffee or tea or other beverage of your choice, and let's talk manga. For those new to my channel, when I talk about the manga I read in the month, I always start with the books I liked the least, and then I make my way to the manga I liked the most. This month, I'm starting off with a real doozy. I ended up DNFing a series which is actually kind of rare for me. I've only done it one other time since starting my channel, but yeah. That series is LDK by Ayu Watanabe. Despite owning the first 8 volumes, I had to stop reading after finishing 3 books because this was legitimately one of the cringiest manga I have ever read. So LDK follows a high school girl named Aoi who's living alone in an apartment because her family had to relocate due to her father's job, and Aoi was able to convince her parents to let her live by herself in order to continue attending the same school as all of her friends. One of Aoi's classmates, a very popular boy named Shusei, ends up moving next door, but Aoi is on bad terms with him as he recently rejected her best friend's love confession. However, fate brings the two together as Shusei has to move in with Aoi temporarily because his apartment is being renovated, and this forced proximity causes some feelings to develop between the two. If I'm being honest, I like the concept of this story. I'm very fond of enemies to lovers romances, and I was under the impression that this was going to be a little steamy, which was also something that I was excited for. But what I got was an overly dramatic, cliche shoujo romance with annoying characters, odd dialogue, and a plot that introduces characters for a couple chapters just to force everyone into these weird sexual situations. Now, I'm going to give some specific examples, so there will be mild spoilers. I'll make sure to provide a timestamp for those viewers who would like to skip ahead to my final thoughts. Now, with the warning out of the way, I want to start by pointing out some weird instances from the second book. In volume 2, Shusei's older sister meets him at the apartment because she's left home and has nowhere to go. She wants to live with Shusei, but Aoi declares that she's dating him to discourage his sister from living with them. The sister then declares that she isn't going to leave until Shusei and Aoi prove they're a couple. Aoi ends up having to buy condoms to make it look like she's sleeping with Shusei, and the two have to sleep in the same bed under the sister's watchful eye. This whole situation is very weird to me, and I don't really understand the point. This is not normal sibling behavior. And then later on in the same volume, there's this underclassman who confesses to Aoi I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right. It sounds weird as I'm saying it, so I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. But anyways, this underclassman confesses to Aoi that he's madly in love with her and has been essentially stalking her because she was nice to him once, like 2 years ago. And that's not even the weirdest part, because this teenager tells Aoi that he wants to be her puppy and then proceeds to lick her fingers. Now, I'm not kink shaming anyone. These two just met. And if I just met someone and they started licking my fingers, I'm punching them in the face. And then it gets worse. Shusei sees this finger licking go down, and he walks over, pulls down Aoi's shirt, proceeds to give her a hickey on her neck. This is all happening on a public bench. And then Shusei looks this dude straight in the eye after he's finished and says, "One's territory should be clearly marked." I literally had to put the book down because the cringe was so intense. And what's truly awful about this manga is that the third volume is even cringier. So in the third installment, there's this big-breasted female teacher who's trying to seduce Shusei, and she's not even subtle about it. She sits next to him in the middle of the school cafeteria and tries spoon-feeding him, which is super weird and inappropriate. But then she starts complaining that she's hot and unbuttons her shirt to the point that her bra is showing and all the students are like staring at her. Where are the other teachers? This is in the middle of the school cafeteria. How come no other adults are intervening here? She also pushes her boobs against Shusei while they're walking, and she attempts to rape him during a school trip. This teacher annoyed the hell out of me, and there didn't really seem to be a point to her character. Again, it goes back to the point that I said earlier. Characters are introduced in order to force sexual interactions. As for my thoughts on the main characters, I didn't really like them. Aoi is basically a doormat. She's naive and lets every male character walk all over her and take advantage of her. She's a typical shoujo heroine in that she's feisty, but she tolerates all the harassment she experiences, which makes her look very weak and it makes her annoying. Shusei is arrogant and extremely unlikable. He's also sexually harassed Aoi multiple times in the first 3 books. For example, the two end up naked in the tub because Aoi's friend is in the apartment and Aoi doesn't want her friend knowing that she's living with Shusei. So they end up hiding in the bath together. Shusei starts like pinching her sides, and then he tries kissing her. And then he did the same thing when the sister was visiting and the two were sharing a bed. His behavior just doesn't sit right with me. It's not cute. It's harassment. Also, the pacing of Shusei and Aoi's relationship is way too rushed and ends up feeling forced. There's no build up to them dating, and I still don't understand what they like about each other or why they even became a couple. Lastly, I thought that the art was just okay. There wasn't anything special about it, and I thought the proportions were off at times, but it wasn't necessarily bad. I have seen the whole LDK collection on some people's shelves, and it's like 24 volumes long, so people have invested quite a bit into collecting the whole series. And I recently discovered that Watanabe sensei released the first volume of a sequel series to LDK just this year. There's definitely a fandom surrounding this manga, and if you like this series, that's perfectly fine. There are series that I like that other people take issue with or criticize. We all have different tastes, but I personally did not enjoy this. I thought it was pretty generic and tropey. I found the characters unlikable, and I thought the story was poorly written. I'm giving this series 1 star, and I will be unhauling it in an upcoming video. So if you're interested in buying it, from me after that riveting review, let me know. But seriously, if you're interested in checking this series out, getting it from your local library or buying it secondhand is the way to go, in my opinion. This next book is part of another series that I've decided to unhaul, and that's volume 4 of Yakuza Lover by Nozomi Mino. I was really disappointed with the last volume in this series, as I thought it focused too heavily on the sex scenes and it didn't progress the plot in any way. And although this volume was better, I don't think it was good enough to keep me reading. Yakuza Lover is a mature josei series following a college student named Yuri who is in a loving yet dangerous relationship with Oya, the leader of a Yakuza syndicate. In this volume, we're introduced to Oya's boss, the leader of the Yakuza organization, and we also get to watch Oya and Yuri celebrate Christmas together. Although it was brief, it was nice to see some actual story progression and character development in this installment. Also, I liked that the volume was less erotic and focused on Oya and Yuri being a couple and enjoying the holidays. There was some really sweet moments between them in this volume, and it was honestly very cute. I really wish that there was more substance to this series because I really adore the characters, especially Oya. He's sexy and sweet. He spoils Yuri and treats her like a princess, but he's also a bad boy with a ruthless side, and I love that. But I have so many other series I would rather be collecting at the moment, series that I think I would enjoy more than this, so I think it's time to say goodbye. This series as a whole gets 3 stars from me. It's not all bad, and it's not all good. Actually, I saw quite a few people comment on Goodreads that they really enjoyed this series as it was a guilty pleasure for them. My recommendation is to check this manga out first before you start buying volumes, just to make sure it's something that you want to invest in. And then I have to talk about a manga that's been on my TBR for quite some time, and that's volume 1 of Wergelder by Hiroaki Samura. I first heard about Wergelder on Dad Weave's Instagram. He described the series as being a hardcore and underrated seinen about Yakuza politics, mega corporation conspiracies, and a woman seeking revenge against a pharmaceutical conglomerate that tortured and imprisoned her. I was in the market for something out of my comfort zone, and this sounded like something I might like. Plus, I liked that it featured strong and intelligent women, so I gave it a try, and I actually quite liked it. It's really difficult to explain the story because there are so many plot threads interwoven, but they are all linked together by the same thing, and that is the mysterious island of Ishikunagajima. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Anyways, this remote island was once an impoverished backwater populated by local residents and fishermen, but in the last decade or so, the island has evolved into a thriving red light pleasure district, despite being 5 hours from Japan's coastline. Whoever's behind this operation has invested a ton of money to ensure there are plenty of brothels and women to please its tourists, but it's hard to imagine that whoever's constructed this enterprise is making a return on their investments from the prostitution alone. There are rumors that a new product is being sold, with the dealings taking place on Ishikunagajima, and a small Yakuza syndicate is determined to discover and obtain this new merchandise. Sending its top 3 agents and a homeless woman named Shinobu, who once called this island her home, the Yakuza travel to the island to watch a transaction take place. However, it's abruptly interrupted by a German sniper named Trina, who is hell-bent on getting revenge. Right off the bat, I will say that this manga will not be for everyone. The series is beautifully illustrated, but it's also extremely graphic and features nudity, sex, and horrific violence, rape, torture, and gore. Basically, the story strongly relies on the exploitation of women, so if you find that kind of media offensive or uncomfortable to read, I don't think you would like this. With all that said, I thought this was a pretty good volume. However, it did have some flaws. My main issue with it is that the plot was very confusing at times because there are so many moving parts and characters. Kodansha made a really good call publishing this series in an omnibus format, because if I had read just the first volume, I probably would have dropped this series. The second part of the book clears up a lot of the confusion. It reveals more of the mystery and it really captures your attention. I'm very intrigued by the sinister forces at play and how they are related and connected to the characters. As for the characters, the women in this series are incredible and unexpectedly charismatic. At first, I was a little worried because the story has very sexist tones, but it's the women who carry the story. Even Shinobu, the protagonist we follow most closely, she's a simple drifter and isn't a highly skilled gangster or assassin, but she's proven that she's quite intelligent and is able to manipulate her way in and out of situations. My favorite character, though, is definitely Trina, the one-eyed killer. Her thirst for revenge and impressive fighting skills showcases her badassery, and her traumatic past. I mean, traumatic doesn't even begin to describe what this woman went through. She has undergone some truly brutal shit, and once you learn what happened to her, everything she does is completely justified. I'm definitely rooting for Trina, and I hope she's able to kill everyone who's wronged her. Lastly, I want to quickly comment on, I think it's Ji Mao is how you pronounce it. She's the kung fu fighting corporate assassin. She's also the character on the cover. Ji Mao's motivation is still a mystery, and I look forward to learning more about her, and I wonder if she'll end up switching sides at some point. It's just kind of a feeling that I get. So I kind of already touched on this earlier, but the art in this series is very well drawn. There's a lot of dynamic action and fighting scenes that I thought looked really smooth and awesome. I liked the unique character designs and realistic anatomy. The gore is really intense, and I was surprised at how little was censored when it came to the nudity. Never thought I'd see an up-close drawing of a cyborg mermaid vagina, but it was in here, and it was shockingly explicit. So yeah, very graphic. If that's not your thing, don't pick this up. In conclusion, Die Wergelder is a very gritty and harsh revenge story. It's fascinating and equally disturbing with a super compelling story. Taking into consideration the issues I had at the beginning, I'm giving this first volume 3.75, maybe 4 stars. If you're a fan of mature seinen manga or pinky violence, which is what Samurai Sensei used as inspiration, then you should check this out. Just beware, it's not for the faint of heart. And then I want to talk about Volume 7 of the classic shoujo series, Sailor Moon, the Eternal Edition by Naoko Takeuchi. This installment marks the beginning of the Dream arc and introduces a couple new characters. First, we have Helios, a mysterious Pegasus who appears before Chibiusa and pleads that she help him find the golden crystal. Additionally, we're introduced to a new villain, the Dead Moon Circus, and it's headed by the mysterious queen Nehelena? I'm not sure I pronounced her name properly. But anyways, this new enemy feeds off of beautiful dreams with the ultimate goal of taking over the Earth and Moon. Although these new bad guys follow the same formula as previous villains, I really liked how they utilized dreams and nightmares as weapons, and how this magic helps push the Sailor Senshi into rediscovering their identity and realizing the value of their friendship to one another. Furthermore, this development helps them become more in tune with their abilities and it awakens new powers, which was really exciting to see. Honestly, I adored how this volume spends time focusing on each of the inner Sailor Senshi, as I really enjoy learning more about them. Also, I briefly need to comment on how happy I was to see the outer Senshi in this, but I don't want to spoil anything, so that's all I'm going to say. I was pleasantly surprised to see Chibiusa admit to herself that her fixation on the younger version of her father is kind of weird, and that she should probably give Usagi and Mamoru their space. It helps that she's developed a crush on a new character. I was not expecting to see Chibiusa get her own love interest, but I'm excited to see where this relationship goes. Now, before I share some of the artwork and spreads, I wanted to quickly touch on something I don't think I've talked about yet, and that's how, up to this point in the story, Mamoru has been playing the role of the damsel in distress who needs to be rescued. He's always being attacked or kidnapped or brainwashed, and it's refreshing to see a male character play that sort of role in a story. Additionally, he usually ends up primarily supporting Usagi with his love so that she can save the day, as she is more powerful than him. I just really like this twist, and it'll be interesting to see if this trend continues in later volumes. Okay, so now I want to share some of the art with you guys. Like, I really wish that the card captor volumes were printed in this sort of format where we got these like beautiful colored illustrations, because if I'm not mistaken, they're just printed on black and white paper. But yeah, I can't believe I'm almost done. I think I only have, I mean, if you include volume 2 of Codename Sailor V, I only have 4 more books to read. Nope, I lied. Nope, I didn't lie. 4 more. Can't count. Overall, I really like this volume. I thought it set up the new villains well, and the cliffhanger made me both nervous and eager for the next volume. I'm giving this volume 4 stars, and I can't wait to see what happens next in the Sailor Mooniverse. Now, these last 2 books are both 5-star reads, and we are going to start with a book that I did not set aside. Where is she? There she is. We have volume 5 of A Sign of Affection, and this is by Sue Morishita. The premise of this story is about the relationship between 2 college students. You have a well-traveled guy named Itsuomi who loves language and is multilingual, and then you have a deaf girl named Yuki who has lived a fairly sheltered life but is eager to become more independent and live new experiences. In this volume, we learn more about Yuki's good friend Oishi, I think is how you say it. I'm having a really hard time with my pronunciations today. We also get to watch Yuki work her first job, and we get to see Yuki and Itsuomi go on a little date. This series continues to be one of the sweetest things I've ever read. It's literally cavity-inducing, which isn't usually something that I like to read, but A Sign of Affection is really great at also being a mature story. The characters don't feel like innocent teenagers, they feel like adults, which I really like. Despite really enjoying this volume, I do have a couple criticisms and or worries about the series. The first is that I feel like the series focuses too much on Itsuomi. We know he's interesting. We know about his interests and his hobbies. I want to learn more about Yuki and what she's interested in besides Itsuomi. Also, I'd love to learn more about her family. In one of the previous volumes, we learn that Yuki's family doesn't know sign language. It seems weird to me that her parents don't sign, and I want to understand why. The other criticism I have about the manga is that I wish it would move a little faster, like a little faster. It's not boring, but very little is happening plot-wise, and I'm yearning for some development and exploration, especially in the romance department. Even with saying all that though, I really do like this manga. It's a comforting and fluffy read that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy on the inside. The illustrations are beautiful, the characters are endearing, and watching them communicate openly is satisfying. There's still no release date for volume 6, I checked, but I'll be pre-ordering it as soon as it's possible. Lastly, we're going to talk about one of my favorite ongoing series, and that's volume 8 of Spy Family by Tatsuya Endo. Spy Family is a comedic slice of life shonen series about an undercover spy named Twilight who's masquerading as a psychiatrist named Lloyd Forger and has to assemble a family for a top secret mission. Unbeknownst to him, Yor, the woman he married, is secretly an assassin, and Anya, the little girl he's adopted, is telepathic. In this volume, the Forger Fam Jam is taking a trip on a cruise ship. Anya and Lloyd are reaping the rewards of Anya winning vacation tickets, while Yor is there for work and is assigned to protect a target from assassination. This was a very Yor / Thorn Princess centric volume that does a great job of fleshing out her character and backstory. We get to see Yor question her motivations for being an assassin and if it's something that she still wants to pursue. Additionally, this is a very action-heavy volume as we get to watch Yor brutally murder some peeps, and I loved it. We love powerful women on this channel. Meanwhile, we get to see Lloyd and Anya have some hilarious and wholesome father-daughter bonding time. I'm always amazed by how well Endo Sensei is able to blend heartwarming, family-friendly content, lighthearted humor, and violent, action-packed scenes. This series continues to be a very entertaining and unique story. I love the characters and I love the dynamics between them. Also, if you haven't watched the anime, I highly recommend you do so, even if you've already read the manga. The anime does a wonderful job of elevating the original material. My husband and I watched the first episode of season 1 part 2 on the weekend, and it was glorious. We just laughed the whole time. I cannot recommend both the manga and the anime enough. Spy Family Cruise Adventure. And there's a picture of Yor. I relate to Yor so much. She's doing her best, you know, as a mom. And that was everything that I read in September. I definitely didn't reach my reading goals this month, which is a bummer, but I'm really hoping I can read more in October. I also have a bunch of videos planned, and trying to get them filmed and edited is going to be a feat, but fingers crossed that I can get it all done. If you're interested in watching more videos from me, you can check out my end card where I'll have links to my most recent videos. I hope that you all have a manga-nificent day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!